When I heard it had to be vacant or underused, I thought, well, that seems kind of like a loophole. Good morning, investors. Bradley here from Watson Estates, and you're listening to the largest, fastest growing podcast for Toronto real estate on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. We were going to come out with an episode yesterday, but then I recalled the federal budget came out yesterday on Monday, and so we're going to today discuss what measures were included that related to the real estate and housing market here in Canada. We're also going to jump into some of the Canadian Real Estate Association stats and discuss whether forcing banks to shoulder more risk could actually act as a reasonable cooling measure to our market, just as an idea. And then you guys have probably heard that Toronto is really a tech hub for North America. We're going to talk about how we rank across the world as it relates to technology and why exactly we have a top spot. But obviously COVID cases are rising, ICUs are filling up, and cops can now pull you over and ask where you're going, except they don't want to. But why not include the cops at this point? After all, politicians are a lot more like those people who sketch facial composites for police reports, if you really think about it. They're con artists. Speaking of which, subscribe and like if you recognize me from somewhere. And please, if you haven't already, please join our investor list where we share off-market deals. And we're actually looking to send out an apartment deal, 24 unit in Alberta, in the next day or so. So jump on that list ASAP. But I was really going to put this episode together yesterday until I remembered that we had the announcement for the federal budget. So I put everything on hold. I said, you know what? We need to include whatever they're going to say. There's definitely going to be something for us. And this is what we're going to start with on the episode today. I got an email from the Toronto Real Estate Board outlining some of the key things that were explained. Obviously, it was a 700 some odd page document, and there's a whole lot more of review that's to take place. But we got this kind of introductory view of some of the details that were in there. And here's what they say in this email that I received. The federal government has tabled a new budget, and it includes several measures related to real estate markets, home buyers, and home sellers. TREB is conducting a detailed analysis of these budget measures and will be providing additional details. Here's some of them. Number one, proposes to provide $4.4 billion. There's a lot of billions. The word billion was said. I actually had the opportunity of watching it yesterday. I heard the word billion a lot. But there's a $4.4 billion to the Canada Housing and Mortgage and Housing Corp, CMHC, to help homeowners complete deep home retrofits through interest-free loans worth up to $40,000. And that's going to be available actually summer 2021. So if you're planning on staying at home, this is maybe an opportunity for you to get an interest-free loan. If you haven't been given enough money, maybe this is a shot. Maybe you want to redo some oil furnaces, insulation, I don't know. Maybe you got some drafty windows or doors, whatever. There's an opportunity for us to do that. They want you to spend, and that's one way to do it. We also have the National Foreign-Owned Vacant or Underused Property, this kind of 1% annual tax that they're going to implement. This is effective January 1st, 2021, so the beginning of next year. And it's going to be 1% tax on the value of non-resident, non-Canadian owned residential real estate and is considered to be vacant or underused. There's a lot of talk about this happening, and this is one of the things that maybe it was a possibility, and they actually came through. Probably the single biggest impact that will happen in our market. And we're going to, as the time goes on, as we get more review, we'll cover some of it here today. We're going to start to figure out whether this is going to have any lasting impact on our market. And I know my thoughts on it. We'll get into that in just a second. But there's also going to be funding to municipalities for various affordable housing programs targeted at vulnerable individuals. And so this is what they say in summation. The measures, TREB specifically, the measures announced in the budget do not take effect until the federal budget is approved by the House of Commons. True. Needs to get approved. TREB is conducting a detailed review of the budget and will provide more details on the above initiatives as they become available. But nothing is final until it's approved by the House of Commons. I think that's a really key moment that we need to highlight, right? And I wonder what kind of maneuvers Justin will use to get past the other parties. I'm sure those conversations are already taking place. Maybe he'll just have to hire the tactical division of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the special horses. Oh, anyways, moving on. Okay, let's look at some of the different reviews, because obviously a lot of people had a lot of things to say about what impact this would have on our market. Well, John Tory, the mayor of Toronto, here's his response. It is not yet clear how the proposed federal tax would affect Toronto's plans to tax vacant properties, right? Because this is still a conversation. Is this something that still needs to happen, or is it something that maybe we should wait to do? That's to be decided. But in a statement released Monday, John Tory praised his federal counterparts for a budget that works to help people and businesses get through this pandemic, but did not specifically address the new measure. So he said, thank you. Thank you. And we hear a lot of thank yous. In fact, another thank you came from the Ontario Real Estate Association that said, OREA would like to commend the federal government's commitment to create a national beneficial ownership registry. The beneficial ownership registry would help stop the practice of criminals using shell companies to buy up homes, giving law enforcement and government an important tool, to keep dirty money out of Canada's housing market. So the cops are warning against large amounts of fake $1 bills this summer. Look out for hot singles in your area. That's so stupid. But anyways, you get the point. So money laundering, okay, we're able to tackle this. This was a big part of the speech that Friedman gave. So here we go. MoveSmartly.com. How does the Canada federal budget impact home buyers and sellers? So we got a lot of praise, right? We got politicians, we got associations all saying, oh, great job, great job. But is it really going to do anything? And is the fact that it might not do anything a bad thing? Some layers to this, baby. Here we go. Starting with this Move Smartly article, the problem with the federal government's proposed tax is that it does nothing to stop non-resident money from flowing into our housing market. True. The federal government is simply asking these investors to rent their investment properties out. And if they don't, they'll have to pay a 1% annual tax based on the value of the vacant property. Good point. When I heard it had to be vacant or underused, I thought, well, that seems kind of like a loophole. Is it not? I mean, you just rent it out, unless that was the ultimate goal, was to turn it back into housing. I don't know. But it seems like a rather easy thing to overcome. This policy is likely to have little to no impact, they say, on Toronto's housing market, since the share of homes that are vacant and owned by non-resident investors is not very large. But doing nothing might be a good thing. If you've been following our last few podcast episodes, one of my biggest fears is an overreaction, an overstep from the government or from government officials or the Bank of Canada or wherever, in a market that could potentially deal with its own problems, and we might already be seeing happening. But listen to this. Many of the recommendations put forward by economists in the run-up were knee-jerk reactions that were trying to solve short-term problems. Much of the demand for homes we've been seeing to date has been from people who want a home to live in, not investors looking to rent them out. They go on to talk about how if you're going to tax anyone, tax these kind of additional homes or all the speculation that's taking place. Tax the investor. It seems to be kind of a common view, at least from Move Smartly. Interesting. But what does this mean for Toronto home buyers today? Today's budget means that our federal government does not want to interfere with our overheated housing market and wants to see demand unwind naturally. It means we are unlikely to see a sudden decline in house prices caused by new government policy that we experienced in examples like 2017 with the foreign buyers tax. The government doesn't want to step anywhere in this, which is actually why I was pretty surprised. I thought there was going to be more measures involved in the budget than there were as it relates to housing. But all that's to say, government doesn't want to get that far involved. And here's what they say in summary. The article believes house prices are more likely to be up versus down next year. The thing about housing bubbles that we often misunderstand is that they can go on for a long time. And just because you call the market a bubble doesn't mean it's going to crash tomorrow. Just because someone steals your credit card doesn't mean you need to report it right away. Why would you? The thief is spending less than my wife. Ugh. But then I saw a Globe and Mail article, and I think this is our kind of last outside view. And they also add one more item to the budget that was missed by TREB. The government has promised an extra $1.5 billion to the Rapid Housing Initiative to build new affordable housing, as well as reallocated $300 million from the Rental Construction Financing Initiative to convert vacant home or vacant office spaces into residential units. I did hear her say that. I thought that was quite interesting. So maybe this is a way of balancing our office space versus residential and where the problem is. And it's also a commitment of people to invest in residential rather than office space, the new work from home trend we're experiencing. But one new tax and additional funding for low income housing will not reverse the runaway trends evident in markets all over Canada. So brings us to this question, and I'll let you guys answer it yourself as well. But is this bullish or bearish for the real estate market? The announcements that were made in the budget, according to Zealand on Twitter, the 2021 budget is very bullish for the real estate market. Lots of spending, which will end up in the hands of home buyers and investors. The only cooling measure, tax on empty units. I can't estimate impact. Many say it's minimal, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. Also, the budget is bullish for the inflation camp, which could result in higher interest rates sooner. Let's talk about that, because this Wednesday is going to be an announcement with interest rates. Will they be hiking interest rates on Wednesday? Probably not. But there will be a conversation on when every single opportunity that Bank of Canada presents their interest rates, they talk about the economy, they talk about what's the plan for interest rates. And there is a possibility that they could say interest rates will be going up sooner than expected, according to this Better Dwelling article called Bank of Canada Expected to Hike Rates Sooner Than Planned, May Cool Housing. I won't get too far into details, but essentially there are three banks, RBC, BMO, and National Bank, who are all expecting higher rates in the near future, sooner than we initially expected. And so here's the funny thing. When you listen to the budget, you probably heard them say the plan was to use low interest rates as an opportunity to invest in the future. This is the best time than ever. Interest rates are low. As Scott Ingram on Twitter says, in quoting Freeland, she said, in today's low interest rate environment, not only can we afford these investments in Canada's future, it would be short-sighted of us not to make them. And then here's what he says. I love it. I guess the federal government is lucky it isn't subject to the stress test. I think it's so funny. But how ironic would it be if the federal government leans into these low rates in the same week, within days of the Bank of Canada mentioning these rate hikes are on the way? I mean, that is maybe an argument in favor of why they probably won't say anything. But leading up to the federal budget, it was expected that you would probably see some mention of interest rates rising sooner. Who knows? Who knows? How crazy is this time that we live in, folks? So let's get into our next topic. First, we're going to cover the Canadian Real Estate Association stats for last month, the month of March, which shouldn't come as much of a surprise because we've seen the TREB stats already. But I also want to answer this question: would forcing banks to shoulder more risk cool the housing market, and what could that look like? So just as a quick market update, we got the stats from CREA. Sales across the country are up 76.2% from the same period last year, obviously compared to the March during COVID when everything shut down. And sales in March were up 5.2% compared to February, which is more of a real view of growth. But of course, sales in the spring tend to be higher than the winter as well. But the average price of a home in Canada during March was up 31% from last year. 31%. Damn. 3% jump. Wow. Of course, these pesky realtors, man, are flying around making money hand over fist while you sit at home locked down with a stay-at-home order. Little buggers. If you want to sick the cops on people, sick them on those damn greedy realtors, no? There's only one way for the chief of police to solve a fly infestation problem: the SWAT team. But according to CREA, the national sales to new listing ratio eased back to 80.5%. I love how it's eased back to 80.5%. That is a vicious strong sellers market. But it was compared to the 90.9% that we saw in January. So we're starting to see a pullback, pretty significant pullback. Canada has only, listen to this, 1.7 months of inventory at the end of March 2021, the lowest on record. Low months of inventory mean generally seller's market, prices on the way up, all of these fun things to look forward to in the coming year, plus not much government intervention. We'll see. CTV News had an article discussing what provinces have experienced the most price growth. Now that we're seeing Canadian real estate in general, the number one province is really a territory, Northwest Territories, up 48.1%. The largest percentage change of house price. That's crazy. Nova Scotia up 30.4%. Then Ontario 24.5%. Don't think we're near the bottom, because we're not. Quebec 22.5%. New Brunswick 20.9%. But here's what's funny. Northwest Territories are number one. What is that made up of? Well, here we go. 6 homes were sold throughout the entire territory, and the ones that were sold in 2021 were marked at a higher price. Imagine 6 homes sold in the entire province or territory. Crazy. When looking at the provinces and territories at the largest upsurge in terms of price difference, Ontario, though, sits in the top spot with a massive increase. Listen to this. Over $170,000. There you go. Why work? We don't need to. I'm surprised they didn't give us a basic income. We don't need to work at this point. $170,000 a year. Capital gains. Let's go, baby. Cha-ching. TheStar.com. Let's look at condo renter vacancies. They say they're still high, but the exodus from Toronto's core may be over. So when we're looking at kind of what's going on in the rental space, it seems as though they got really slammed. I mean, 7-8% vacancies. That's crazy compared to what, 1%? Especially when we're looking in the purpose-built apartments, they've really been hard hit. But we're starting to see a bit of a strengthening happening. So yes, we saw 14% across the region slide in rents. And in Toronto, we saw a 16.2%. In fact, it got to the point where the 905 was more expensive by $20 than it was to rent in Toronto. But Urbanation, the one that's kind of talking in this report, said condo rents appear to have bottomed in January, with prices increasing by about 1% month over month in both February and March. A trend we've been tracking for a while, and now another source that's kind of saying the same thing. In fact, we're seeing, as evidence of this, remember that talk as we rounded into 2021? Oh, there's going to be a huge surge of inventory. Massive apartments are being built. Pre-constructions are all coming online. Yes, they are, but they're all being absorbed. This is what's crazy, guys. When we look, there was a big spike in the GTA condo rentals completions in March. Real estate market hasn't even blinked and absorbed this new supply effortlessly. It's crazy. Like when I look at 2020 in March for what came online, just over 1,500. We are sitting at 4,500 new completions. You didn't even know. In fact, you're looking right now at rents, and we're starting to see, we saw some stabilizing happening, but we're actually starting to see rental inventory declining again. Wow. In the GTA. But is the market balancing itself out? And this was really the conversation leading up to the federal budget, is what are they going to do? Are they going to overshoot what needs to happen? Maybe the market is getting a little bit of support itself. Maybe people aren't okay with paying over $1 million for the average home. Maybe. Well, Scott Ingram says good news. Sales look like they've moderated in the 416 for both condos and freeholds. And then he kind of has this little chart and he combines that with the increasing listings, and some heat is coming off the market. So this like crazy price growth is kind of fizzing out a little bit. Are prices going down? No. But the growth, that's really the concern. The excessive growth that we've been experiencing, that is what would require some intervention. But when we look at both freehold and condos, we see freehold is 74% of 416 freeholds are being sold over asking, which is nutty. And also in the condo space, we got, 60% are being sold over asking last week. This is kind of looking at weekly data. So still very much a reason for prices to keep going up, but hopefully we continue to see more inventory coming on the market, and hopefully the market can deal with itself, because if it can't, someone is bound to step in. So should we leave the market as is, or should we have some kind of intervention? Bringing justice to the market needs the same due diligence as arresting a crow. Probable cause. I know that's stupid, right? But I was going to use the duck joke about selling quack. I thought that the cause one would be better. Anyways, betterdwelling.com. And this idea of a soft landing, that's kind of the definition we're using today for not interfering with prices, them kind of finding their own top and plateauing. We're going to call it a soft landing because that's what this Better Dwelling article called it. But here's what they say. They say there's some problems to that. Canadian real estate prices are now beyond frothy. The government says it's fine. They believe they can prevent home prices from falling and let incomes catch up. So this idea of incomes are below. They're well below the prices. So if we just let prices kind of stay flat over the next period of time, we'll allow the incomes to catch up. That's kind of this concept, I guess, of having a soft landing. Well, here's what they say. On many occasions, the industry declares a soft landing after a pause in price growth, which is maybe what we're seeing right now. Short pauses in home price growth or prices falling briefly aren't a landing, though. The market inefficiencies remain and extend further once price growth continues. whether or not they continue. I mean, I think people generally accept that prices will naturally go up over time, but it would take decades for the largest property bubbles to correct in income alone. Then they go on to look at the household incomes versus the prices that we're experiencing here in Toronto. Households need to see incomes rise and prices stall for 19 years. Are we going to see flat prices in Toronto for 19 years? Absolutely not. Are we going to see the average income increase by 2% while prices stay flat for the next 19 years? Absolutely not. In fact, if you're between the ages of 25 and 34, you'd be between 44 and 54 years of age before you could carry the payments. So clearly we have this disconnect in affordability. I'm okay with that. Are you okay with that? Is affordability truly an issue? Or are we just okay with real estate as a means to wealth, which it's been for years and years and years to come? So it brings me to this question, now that we've looked at some of the Korea stats. Would forcing banks to shoulder more risk cool the housing market? This is a Globe and Mail idea. And I like to bring ideas up, especially when they're ones that have been investigated and silenced in the past, like this one. Here's what they say. It's time for the federal government to revisit the idea that mortgage insurance, which is ultimately backstopped by taxpayers through CMHC, shouldn't give lenders blanket protection when consumers default on insured mortgages. They don't like that CMHC is insuring mortgages. That's kind of the premise of this article. If banks and other lenders were required to bear even a modest portion of the risk for insured mortgages, say up to 10% of the outstanding value of a defaulted loan, they would tighten their lending standards and prevent consumers from getting into much debt. So we've got this balance of people we're really using the stress test as this way of you have to overcome the stress test in order to get in, unless you're already in which case which really screws people trying to get in the market for the first time. But instead, we're putting a lot of the work back on the banks and saying, we're not going to give you a get out of jail free card. We're going to take that away. Well, Ottawa did launch a consultation on, quote, lender risk sharing for insured mortgages back in 2016, a very hot period of time when it comes to prices. Oddly, though, no final report appears to have been issued in the years since. When asked about the consultation's outcome, the Department of Finance was cryptic, saying the government continues to closely monitor the health and stability of the housing market. That's it. That's it. Maybe that's an idea. Add it to the idea book. Reminds me of a time that answer reminds me of a time that I was interviewed by police and said, no comment to every question. No comment. I find out next week whether I got the job. We'll see. So now we're going to get into some hot topics. Please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Hit that like button if you can give me a reference if I do, in fact, get hired by the OPP. And we're going to start off in a CBC.ca article called Toronto Real Estate Board Dropping Master Bedroom Term. Master Bedroom. The Toronto Real Estate Board President Lisa Patel says it will use the word primary in place of master when referencing the main or principal bedroom in homes in the coming months. The word master is often seen as a reference to racism, sexism, and slavery. So it's primary bedroom from now on. And my lawyer has advised me not to insert any police jokes in the section. So we're going to move on. Majority of Canadians believe home prices only go up. Most will never own. And this was our next topic here is RBC had a poll called the Spring Housing Poll asking people, I guess, a couple questions. One, do you think prices are going to go up? And two, are you ever going to be able to own one? And so the survey found most Canadians only see home prices rising soon. There's a lot of confidence. We've seen that in many other surveys. And most households now only believe a minority of the population will be able to buy going forward. A sticking point here that they don't say in this article, but I would include, is just because people think prices are going to go up is not a reason to say prices will go up. Oftentimes people look and say, hey, prices have been going up. Therefore, my expectation is prices will go up. And there's actually, from other articles we've seen, there's not even really much connection between whether people think it's going to go up and whether it does. But here's what the results of the survey say, just for giggles. The survey found 61% of Canadians agree home values will only go up in the immediate future. In Ontario, the expectation is even higher at 70% of respondents. But more than a third of Canadians under 40, wow, have given up on home ownership. Wow. More than a third. 36% have said they've given up on home ownership. And in Ontario, that's 39%. Almost 40% of people under the age of 40 say we can't ever own a home. It's literally impossible. They threw their hands up in the air. And so we also had this question. Last item I want to add from the poll. RBC found 62% of households across the country agree the majority of people are priced out. The number was higher in Ontario, where 71% of people agree. Affordability despite all the craziness of COVID and all of this ups and the downs and the fear and the turmoil, and what is the biggest issue in our market? What did we say the whole time? Affordability. Here it is, guys, right in your face. Now everyone is fully aware. Once again, affordability was the issue that really continued all the way through and has not changed. Next topic, let's talk about lumber prices. Lumber prices are absurd. Absolutely crazy. But according to BMO's Capital Market, updated its benchmark Western spruce pine fir lumber forecast for April, and the bank sees the lumber prices dropping in the second half of the year. So if you're planning on doing your deck, maybe try to do that in the fall rather than the spring. SPF is a forecast in the fall in 2022 to be down over 61.8% from this week. So we're going to see a massive drop, not the whole way down, but a pretty significant drop in the cost of lumber if BMO is right in its prediction. The bank expects prices to start falling in the second half of the year, straight through to 2022. When the lumber market corrects, it can do so in a hurry. That's what they say. So let's see. Hopefully that brings some of the cost down of building, which is obviously equated to thousands of dollars on the bottom line for buyers. But is the forecast enough proof for you? The forecast of prices coming down. Are you going to hang your hat on that one? Or will you only believe it when you see it? Me personally, I like to speculate a little bit myself. I feel like that's what puts us ahead a bit. But if someone throws part of a brick through my front window, here's my logic. Someone throws a bit of a brick, like just this like segment of really blowing the joke here. Brick, small piece, thrown through your window. I would hate to have the cop that shows up and says there wasn't enough concrete evidence. That was the joke. That's it. Which brings me to my last and final topic is Toronto. First of all, Toronto is one of the tech capitals of the world. We've talked about this. This has been a big reason people have come, especially markets like Kitchener, Waterloo. It's why the down by the water, this whole Google city was such a big deal, right? We are the tech hub of North America. I've even seen reports that say we're number one. Why? This is what I want to cover here. We really have one article talking about it. I thought it was a great article to include because, I think we can think of, maybe we're just good at it. We're just good at it. Yeah, that's it. We're just smart. Not really, guys. Not really. The article is called Canada Offsets Expensive Real Estate with Low Paid but High Quality Tech Labor. Here's what they say. The mystery of how Canada attracts so many big tech companies was revealed in a commercial real estate analysis. The country of Canada scored 5 spots on CBRE's 2020 list of top 50 tech hubs. Canadian cities took 5 of the top 50 spots, and Toronto came in 4th. When it comes to overall appeal for tech firms and talents, the only cities ranked higher were San Francisco, Washington, D.C., and Seattle, in that order, and then Toronto. But why? Why is Toronto there? The reasons they say is it costs a lot less to hire Canadian tech workers. Canadian tech employees are some of the highest quality and have the lowest pay. I don't know if I want to be a top spot once you hear that. Canada's low wages more than make up for expensive office space. It's really interesting because there's this balance, right? Because we know real estate prices are really awful high in Toronto. Well, that is despite the expensive costs of all the office space. Employees are cheaper to a point where it actually puts us at the top of the list. Running a large tech firm is significantly cheaper in Canada than in the US, just not the office space. Canada took the bottom spots for total cost. Despite this, the rents were actually some of the highest in the tech hubs. Crazy. It's really cool to see where we stand from 20,000 feet up when we're comparing against all these other countries. Like stats wise, not cop wise. Whoever invented police helicopters doomed all of us. Everything's going to happen now that pigs can fly. But Canadian tech hubs are high quality, which is good. That's good. Low cost. Okay. To operate, which explains the inflow of big tech. Real estate prices are some of the highest on the list, but are offset by the low wages. It's so funny to see the dynamic that happens here and some of the items that they've reviewed in putting us on that list. It's great for tech firms, but not so much for labor. So instead of maybe, working hard in school and getting that really valuable tech job in the city, in the GTA, maybe we'll just invest in real estate and we'll make $170,000 a year. That seems a little easier in my book. But it sounds like trouble if the employees realize they can move or work from home. Maybe there's a reason that we're converting some of this office space over to residential housing. Who knows? Who knows? Please subscribe, hit the like button if you think staying at home at this point is a little bit overrated now that we've entered the third wave. But I think this is a place that I'm going to wrap up. By now, you're probably getting sick of my police puns. So I guess I'll have to give them a rest. I'll see you guys next time. Take care and keep it real.